This is Dianne Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Thank you very much, audience, for being here. I am the host of Dianne Andrews in Black and White, and it's pretty obvious. My name is Dianne Andrews. I want to thank the people in YouTube. I want to thank the people all over the state in 50 parishes. From Shreveport down to New Orleans, we're on in all major cities in between. The only city we don't have is Lake Charles. Today we're going to do a show that is a very difficult show of something very difficult to talk about. It is human versus sex, trafficking versus prostitution. A lot of people get the terms very cloudy of what the difference is. And I'm going to make it simple, but I'm going to have two experts, or one real expert here, to explain a little more in detail about what the definition of these words really mean, and what the real, not just the definition, what it really means to a person, a living human being. Human trafficking consists of a $150 billion industry, and that is labor, which is 50 billion of it, and 100 billion of it would be the sex part of the sex trafficking. If you're 18 years old or over, it's usually transporting a person. It's modern day slavery. Just look at it like when blacks or anyone who's ever been treated badly, out of their will, taken out of their home, doing something they don't want to have to do for nothing at the other person's mercy is what it is. Then we have prostitution. Prostitution is usually over 18 at will, and prostitution is where I do a sexual pleasure for someone for payment, whether I'm doing it online as an escort in a brothel, or whether I have a pimp. There's a payment involved. Now, you may not get all of that payment, but there's a payment involved. Come on back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White right after this commercial, and you'll hear the real details and the real horror stories from George Mills of Hope House and Trafficking Hope, and Felicia Howard. Come on back, Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Order your copies now of Dianne Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Dianne Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.
Hello, my name is Debbie. Welcome to Debbie's Bridal, a Formal Affair.
My name is Raven. I work at Debbie's Bridal, and she makes your dreams come true.
Coming back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience know someone who's been humanly trafficked, sexually trafficked, or prostituted. If you don't know someone, you know someone who knows someone, or whose child has been sexually trafficked. A lot of children you can't find are sexually trafficked. I have with me George Mills, who is an ex-drug user, an ex-drug pusher, and who started a substance abuse outreach center for Centacor Foundation from 1997 to 2014. He worked there and added up to almost 18 years, because it was the beginning of 1997 to the end of 2014. So he took that facility, which I'm a board member of, from an outreach center to a 230-bed facility. Quite a tribute for a person who themselves at one time needed to be in a place like Centacor, right, George?
Well, yes, but let me put it this way: I didn't do that all myself.
Right.
I was just part of it.
Yeah.
I was kind of the glue, I guess, for a while. I had a lot of volunteers.
You were managing
a lot of
it
great
then,
staff
yes.
members, a lot of community involvement. But yeah, it was remarkable that we were able to take where we had no long-term treatment opportunities in Baton Rouge to a 230-bed functional
and
facility.
And that's a multi-state Centacor Foundation is headquartered in Houston,
correct.
Texas.
That is
now,
correct.
Now, in 2014, you left, which really was the beginning of 2015, to go to Trafficking Hope.
Yes.
Which is a nonprofit organization that promotes awareness and education on trafficking, correct?
We do that, and we also do have a facility that helps rescued victims.
Right, that's your Hope
trafficking.
House. I was going to mention that
Yes.
next year. Your
Yes.
Hope House, which was there first, and then you merged into Trafficking Hope.
Yes, we
and now
merged
you're the
together.
president of both.
That is
that
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So that's quite a tribute to a guy who, how many years ago? 1994, I think you got out of prison, right?
That is correct.
And so in those many years, 22 years, you've turned multiple 360 degrees around.
Yes, that's a great.
On my
the truth.
on my left, I have Felicia Howard. Felicia Howard herself is a victim of incest in her own home. She was raped, and out of that rape became a child. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But she works in the sex trafficking industry in something like Hope House, helping those victims of sexual trafficking, sexual molestation, which she was a victim of sexual molestation herself. Let's start a little bit about how your life and what you'd like to tell us, as much as you want to, as little as you want to, about your journey with the incest, because a lot of that is still an out of control, being controlled kind of environment as you are as being trafficked.
Yes.
And that is true. I am, again, of a victim, but I am a survivor.
Right.
And I have been for the past 32 years, and that's really what piqued my interest to work with the children that's involved in sex trafficking. And I was 12 years old when it first began, and I became pregnant, and I gave birth to a baby. And so now I'm at the place that I want to give back, and I know that I can have an opportunity in any panel to speak out, and I have to be a voice for other children that are involved. And sex trafficking, pretty much, a lot of people think it's like prostitution, and just my opinion, prostitution is pretty much voluntarily.
Right.
Sex trafficking is involuntary. That means someone else, it manipulates the individual to do this for their expense. Now, incest...
Now, in prostitution, I think some women feel I have no other choice to make money. And it's volunteer, but kind of non-volunteer, somewhere in the middle. You got all, I think you have all spectrums in prostitution.
Depending on the individual and their circumstance and situation. But incest, I would say, is something really taboo. People don't talk about.
Right.
It's really a hush-hush.
I had another, I did a show on domestic violence, and then I did a show on rape. And I had two women. One had been sexually assaulted by her, sodomized only for 1.5 years in her house, afraid, and they make you afraid to tell your parents that they're going to kill them. And the other lady had been sexually assaulted from 2 years old by her, I won't say her, one of her relatives, and then her brother started at 10 years old. So let's talk about how much of that you see over in the Hope House and in what you've seen in the sexual trafficking.
As far as being groomed from adolescence or starting, we know from what we see, but also from data, that the average age of recruitment is somewhere between 12 and 13 is the prime age of recruitment for sexual trafficking victims. We know there are recruiters in our schools, and they're looking for them.
So parents need to be aware.
Parents need to be very aware, especially on social media and stuff. A lot of them are recruited through social media. It's very easy to do.
And it used to be, George, from what I read, it was more the, you know, the downtrodden kind of a lower economic status, but now they're going to the rich people's home schools, and they're recruiting in the malls. I understand they do a lot.
That's correct. And what they're looking for is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And especially...
Well, a lot of rich people don't have time. And so the kid is out there alone.
And vulnerability can be anything from emotional to financial to whatever. But that's what they target on, and traffickers are smart. They know how to pick that up. For instance, if you're a young adolescent girl and you're putting all over Facebook that, you know, I hate my parents, I hate my school, I hate living here, that, guess what? Bang. You know, I have an in. I have a potential, you know, victim.
So would you think that all parents or guardians or people that love their children need to have access to what their children are saying on social media? Wouldn't that be a plus?
Definitely. They should know their passwords. They should know the passwords of the accounts they aren't supposed to know about.
Last week I just did a show on Brittany Mills, our case here, the unhacking and hacking of the phone about Apple. And we were saying, some people were saying on the panel, why didn't her parents have her password? And then they would know who the last person who may have come in and may have been the one that shot her because she opened the door freely. But let's talk a little bit more about, are you a parent now, Felicia?
I am.
Okay.
I have.
Do you check the social media sites of
Well, my children now, my youngest is 24 and my oldest is 28, and I still, you know, I'm one of those parents that hands-on and let them know it's best to be safe than sorry.
Right.
And even with parenting their children, I'm really one of those sticklers about my grandchildren. And more than anything, being an incest survivor, it starts at home. And the reason why the
Now, do
perpetrator...
your children know, and I know they're not a part of the first child by the incest, do they know about
They do.
their sibling? Okay. Tell me how much of that you see that may have caused some of your victims to go, not to go into, maybe some I've seen go into, read, go into prostitution, into the voluntary versus the involuntary. They're on the streets, and a lot of people may pick them up to traffic them. Do you see that, George, at all here in Louisiana? How many victims do you have here, or survivors that have come through your house in a year? How many average?
Usually on the average, we're having 20 plus referrals per year, and really that 20
And that's at
plus,
Hope House.
At Hope House is really because of the resources and the stuff that we have to be able to take care of.
And how long do they stay usually in Hope House? How long does a lady average? I know there may be different times. Is it the longest time they can stay, or they stay as long as they need?
They really stay as long as the care plan dictates. They say the average length of the program is usually about 12 to 18 months. We've had a couple that finish in as little as 6 months, and it's really because
When you
of the
say
dynamics.
finish, what does that mean? What does that mean, finish?
When they've gone through all our pillars.
Name some for me. What do they have to go through?
It's based on first of all, we are a faith-based program. We're based on a spiritual
Okay.
premise that what you seek first organizes the rest of your life. Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all his righteousness and all these things will be given to you. Well, so we set a spiritual foundation.
Is that what helped you get out of what you were going through? Did you become religious and believe in God back in 1994 when you got out? You got saved.
I got saved. And yeah, between that and I was talking with your other guests this morning.
Felicia, yeah.
The key things is Matthew 6:33, Romans 12:1, which again is, sacrificing your body in that is really an act of worship. So living your life that way is realizing that everything you do is an act of worship.
Are you teaching more spirituality and Bible, or is there a certain religion you teach at your Hope House?
It is not a specific religion.
Okay.
It is just Bible-based.
Right. Okay.
So we do that, then the physical piece, exercise, proper diet. For instance, if they're diabetic, we put them on a low simple carb diet,
Right.
get them exercising and stuff. Behavioral health, if they have an addiction issue, they see an addiction counselor, they see other counselors for behavior. If they need
A lot of them on drugs?
med management. A high percentage of them are on drugs because drugs are also manipulating and controlling factor. Then life skills, which is this huge basket. Because I have girls, I have one girl out there now that was in 47 different foster care facilities. Before she was 18, I had a girl that just completed.
I'm doing that in 2 weeks foster care.
That was recruited off a college campus in Texas with a few hours short of a bachelor's degree. So very
When you say recruited, do they snatch her, or did they make her think it was something glamorous, a modeling job,
she was
an
lured,
actress?
the one that was lured off the college campus was promised them stuff as far as a musical and a performing career that went to stripping, to a quote of how many people she was going to have sex with every day.
And that happens to a lot of teenagers, right? They think they're going to some glamorous life, 17, 18, 19, 20. College students are that about, and oh, you're beautiful, which all women love to hear. And so they lure them in and they lie to them. And then,
and you also have kind of the sex tape promise that goes around, the Kim Kardashian model, I guess, because we know of cases where gangs would send out internet messages that will help make this sex tape for you, and you'll be famous like Kim Kardashian. And they think, well, she go from a stylist to being married to a rapper and a television celebrity.
Yeah.
So I think.
how do we make people more aware, at 17, 18, 19, not to believe the hype and the lies that...
Through education and awareness, continued education, and through parental help.
Yeah.
It starts at the home.
Right, so first you got to get to the parent. That's what I was thinking about. Does anyone know of any outreach, since you were in the industry, to outreach to parents on the things we're talking about?
We do all kinds of education and presentations and stuff. Sometimes
at Trafficking Hope. I was at a function you had a couple of months ago that was really very, very, very nice. And you do a lot of that to raise money to pay for.
Yeah, but we also do a lot of education. We do trainings, we do education, do mothers and daughters, we do stuff in the schools.
Now, is all of your money donated, or can you get grants for something like Hope House? Or since there are 3, I think you told me in the state, for grown 18 and above, and 1 Covenant down in New Orleans for younger than 18. So it's 4 in the state, and you said another one is being built.
Yeah, Metanoia is being built. Right now, we're not getting any government grants just because of the restrictions and the infrastructure requirements and the different things attached
But they
to
do
them.
give grants for this kind of facility?
Most of what they're trying to do is set up coalitions, and there are some service grants, but there's some issues attached to those grants that we can't take. Because right now we are only an adult female facility. Can't take males there, I can't take transgender, I can't take other things because we specifically have a female population.
Right.
And most of your grants will say you have to serve all the populations.
No matter.
Right now, and we're just not equipped to do that.
Right.
We're just not able to do that.
The physical structure is not equipped.
It's just not there.
Yeah.
Because the other issue you have too is the adolescent programs that exist in the state are for young girls. There is nothing for young boys. And
What
young boys
percentage,
are-
I read like 3 to 5% were boys. Is that accurate from what you all have seen, or less or more?
Well,
But 3 to 5 is pretty small, so I don't know.
I would say more.
it's more
More?
because you got to remember the data, how
Yeah,
it's tracked
how
now.
old it is.
In 2014, legislation created Act 564 that required DCFS to start accumulating data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, between 2014 2015, there was a 73% increase in cases.
In sex trafficking cases.
Sex trafficking cases, verified sex trafficking cases. The problem with that data is, again, where that data is coming from basically is New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Shreveport, because that's where you have the NGOs, or the non-government organizations that work closely with law enforcement that are reporting and getting this information.
Right.
But if you look at, monitoring
You know how to do rape, domestic violence, all of the numbers like this are skewed because people don't necessarily tell
Yes.
the truth on what's going on. Now, when we look at the sex trafficking part of this industry, it's a reusable commodity, and I think that is the biggest thing that is attracting a lot of drug dealers
Right.
are going into sex also, and they say it's a bigger industry now. We said 150 when you add in the labor part to the human trafficking, and 100 billion when we just talk about the sex trafficking of that. You know how many marijuanas and things it takes to sell that? So now they can use a girl on average, we were saying, 10 to 15 times at $300 an hour, $3,000 to $4,500 a day. And then they can reuse her, and you said up to like 7 years before I guess she just can't take it anymore.
Well, yeah, the data that we have out there is again, the average life expectancy or life rate of a sex trafficking victim is about 7 years, and that's because of the beatings, the drug use, the continued sexual, I mean, you just wear out.
And no medical
Suicides, no.
care given to you.
No, so you have that, and then they have their quotas.
How do they get away? George, how did these women that get to you, give me some instances, some ways that they've gotten away, so maybe somebody may...
Well, I'll tell you where we get most of the girls that come from. So a lot of them come through law enforcement.
They're picked up?
They're picked up, or they're done another thing, and they're identified as victims. We've gotten some through emergency rooms. We had one where a lady, a community center director in Mississippi, saw one running partially clothed down the street because when the trafficker was
Unclothed down the street?
Well, when the trafficker was beating the other girl, she knew where she was next, and she ran out the door. So it was just a God thing that the person that knew about us so picked her up, kept her overnight, and then brought her to us the next day. So they're coming to us from primarily through law enforcement operations and stuff. Because there's a thing that people will say, well, why don't they run? They're being beaten, they're forced to do this.
Right.
A couple things. One, out of fear.
Right.
They've been groomed or processed, which is usually everything.
And they get to their mind, don't they?
You can go online, you can buy a book on how to become a pimp or a trafficker.
Yeah, I've seen that book.
Basically, what the process do is to completely take away the identity of the victim.
Right.
They can't move, they can't eat, they can't use the bathroom, they can't talk, they can't do anything.
And they
without
make you think you're
permission.
nothing and you're worthless.
Yeah.
That too, and then they're afraid of them, and then there's the Stockholm syndrome effect too, where you identify with your trafficker, or your abuser, and actually.
You remember what was her name back in the 70s? You read about Patty Hearst.
Patty
she
Hearst
ended
was
up
a great
carrying a gun
example.
with her.
She was out robbing banks
with the guys who abducted her.
Yep.
It's almost kind of the same thing because she was basically sexually trafficked because they were raping her too.
She was broke.
In the beginning, they broke her down.
Manipulated.
Right.
Yes.
She got the Stockholm syndrome. She became a part of that.
So we have to fundamentally change all those things, and we do that through that process with these ladies. So one
How
thing.
many people work at Hope House?
Out there, we have 3 full-time staff members out there. The rest of them are part-time and volunteers, primarily volunteers.
Yeah.
Our physicians are volunteers.
So if anybody wants to volunteer, just call Hope House. What do they do on the TV audience?
Well, you can go to our website.
Okay.
Is the easiest way, which is Trafficking Hope traffinginghopeLA.org.
Okay, traffickinghopela.org.
And if you'll check on, there's a you just go to the volunteer thing and you just fill out a little volunteer application. What we do is roughly about every quarter, we'll do a little, we're starting to do training, which is approximately a 4-hour training. Part of it's education, part of it's awareness, and then kind of channel people in the right places. Because everyone's not made to go serve at the residential facility.
It's a tough
Some people
place
can
to
do
be.
speaking and awareness or help fundraising. There's a lot of help we need.
Yeah, like people a lot of times I always tell people, you may not have money, but you have time to donate. If you have time, you have something you can give. You always have something you can give, and always giving, whatever you give, makes you feel a better person. We had talked briefly about the 2-year-old, no names of course or anything, but are you available to talk about that today, about the 2-year-old who was sold by her parents?
Yes. There was an incident that a 24-month-old was being trafficked by the parent, and of course the parent was on drugs at the time that they were shooting a movie called 8 Days. And in the midst of the shooting of the movie, they were informed that there was a trafficking situation going on, and the security and the law enforcement had to stop in the middle of the filming, and that's what they found when they bust down the door. There was a 24-month-old that had up to 10 partners a day.
A day, 24 months.
Yes, and working at the facility, say how where I was, a lot of time the victims say over and over again when you talk to them about their background, they've been molested or incest been involved, and they just feel like these people that are supposed to be my support system, if they would do this to me or allow this to happen to me, then that's when they say, well, they just pretty much just give up. What hope do I have? What support do I have?
Come to Hope House. Tell me, in your own personal journey, when your half-brother was molesting you every night, did you think, I have no way, I can't tell parents, I can't tell anybody? How long did it last for you, Felicia?
Almost 2 years. And for myself, when I look back, my reason for the silence, I grew up in a home, love, support. My family, very family-oriented. My parents provided a very good life for us. And we would have family time, and that's when, because we were a large family with 5 other siblings, you would talk about what was important going on in your life at that time. So everyone shared good news. And at that time, I just didn't want to be the barrier of bad news. And not only that,
he didn't tell you, I'll do something to you.
He would always say,
somebody?
I would do it to the other sibling. And the way I felt, I said, well, I wouldn't want them to feel the pain and the humiliation that I felt.
How do you know he wasn't anyway doing it to some of the others?
Exactly, but at that time, a 12-year-old,
Did he do it to any others that you are aware of today?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. But
what would you like to tell women out there who may, and this incest is bigger than I thought, from the people I've interviewed on the show the last 20 months?
And just, it's not you. It's totally not you. It's not, you did nothing wrong. And my grandmother, I thank God for, said to me, God allowed it because He knows you can handle it. She said, and at the end of the day, we're all servants. And
well, now you have a bigger message to spread, what you're going to do.
Because, and even with the girls in sex trafficking, girls been raped, molested, even the women ministry, the youth ministry that I'm involved in, I know I can sit there and at the end of a dark tunnel, just like, give them a little line of light.
You tell them your story, which makes them know you can relate to some of what they've gone through?
Very much so. And, and it's not your fault. You did absolutely nothing wrong. And
now, George, is that what you're seeing too, that most of the women think it's their fault? That they were sexually trafficked? Do they believe it's their fault?
Yeah, there's a big element of that.
So first they've got to heal themselves.
Well, and the other thing, they not only have to heal themselves, but they have to understand that they have value other than, I'm worth way, way more than $300 an hour.
Right, right.
And get that validation, that's again, what we see.
Then you tell me some guys give them quotas like the $3,000 or $4,000. They say, this is your quota.
This is your quota. If you go over it, it doesn't change the next day's quota. It's still the same thing. The craziest thing that I've ever, and I still can't figure this out, but a lot of the ladies continue to tell us the kind of a reward for going over their quota, they got a McDonald's Happy Meal, or they got to sit in the front seat of the car.
So
stuff like
having
that,
love with 10 to 15 guys a day, bringing in $4,500, $5,000, you got a McDonald's Happy Meal once a week, or
no,
one
for that
day?
For that day and episode.
So do they starve them if they don't?
No, I mean, a lot of the ladies that come to us, when we put them on proper diets, they've been living on like ramen noodles and just
No,
junk
no
food.
protein,
No,
just
it-
carbohydrates,
just
keep the energy
and
up.
fast food, and just junk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what we're
Whatever.
going to do, anything else you'd like to leave with your audience? We're going to close it off right now and start my closing.
Okay. I'd just like to say one thing, that the human trafficking is prevalent in the world, in our country, in our state, in our community.
Right.
And
People tend to think it's not here in Baton Rouge, but it's
oh,
live and
oh,
well
yes,
here too, isn't it?
Very much.
Definitely is.
Now, I read too that, that trafficking are done a lot at these big events, like the Olympics in Brazil.
They follow the money.
Yeah, they follow the money.
Follow the money.
So don't let your kids
Casinos.
follow the money.
But we have two major routes coming through Louisiana, 10, 12 on the south and 20 on the north, where people are moved back and forth regularly through those places. So,
Through like cars, just
we'll transport it from basically hotel to hotel, move them around, and a lot of the transactions are done through the internet. So
the internet has probably uplifted trafficking by exponentially how much
Yes.
money.
it makes them much easier to do.
Yeah, because they actually put flyers out there and say summertime, if you're interested, you have the time, $60, $80 a week, we have benefits, you
And they
can
think it's a
travel,
job.
and they think it's an actual job.
So they're really fooling people.
Yep.
This is a good show for the Shine a Light, my closing that I do, because I saw this as a little girl growing up in a little town, Rouge, Louisiana. And they said if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be. You can imagine the illumination, and what that's not, it's not just the light of the candle. It's about opening your heart. It's about helping other people, because the more you help, the more you give. I tell people all the time, I'm Donald Trump, I pay for the show. So this is my give back to the world to try to help, because I've done, in 20 months, I've interviewed over 400 people, and I got a real job. And I do it all. I produce it. I get the people. I do everything, as you all know, bugging you. But if you don't give back and try to fix what you think is a problem, or what you know is a problem, what you see as a problem in the world, because it's going to make you a better person. My show has made me a better person. So goodbye, and see you next week for some great show on Dianne Andrews in black and white.
Hello, my name is Debbie. Welcome to Debbie's Bridal, A Formal Affair.
My name is Raven. I work at Debbie's Bridal, and she makes your dreams come true.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.